Cartoon Network's getting cut back to ending at 7 p.m. on May 1st, and this new scheduling brings up more questions than answers. Is there any sense to the idea, or are we just seeing the channel's death by 1,000 cuts? I'm Benzie Johnson Jr., I'm enthusiastic about television. Let's dive into the details. Remember when new episodes of Adventure Time premiered at 8? It feels like a world away from the state of the channel these days. Cartoon Network's had quite a bit of scheduling creep over the years, progressively losing more and more airtime to Adult Swim, the edgier, more experimental channel with which it shares. Back at the start of 2009, Adult Swim snagged a 10 p.m. start time, as well as their legendary fling with the rights to King of the Hill. Barely 2 years later, they expanded to 9 o'clock, the first point at which you could begin to question the appropriateness of starting that early. On March 31st, 2014, AS overtook the 8 p.m. hour, though they would come to cede it back late each year so CN could hawk as many toys as they could in the run-up to Christmas. Now, on May 1st, 2023, 9 years, 1 month, and a lifetime of change later, Cartoon Network is losing yet another hour, officially ending at 7 p.m., except on Sundays, where the ACME Night programming block will still run from 6 till 9. Personally, I wasn't happy with Cartoon Network ending at 9, much less 8, so a 7 o'clock cutoff makes even less sense. Though, according to ratings data reported in Deadline when this news was announced, 68% of Cartoon Network's overall viewership between 6 and 8 p.m. was over 18, thus seemingly justifying the extension of Adult Swim into such family-friendly airtime. Most of the time, I don't dispute the numbers, and at least we have some to judge this move with. But this time I am gonna try and argue against them, because this is a lose-lose situation for Cartoon Network, and Adult Swim in some ways too. The biggest impact is the havoc this change is gonna wreak on some of CN's most visible airtime of the day, on weekdays at least. After-school airtime is a precious thing. Cable Kids TV's one killer feature, so powerful that it drove over-the-air efforts out of business, was that it could keep serving up shows right until bedtime. If that argument has been dubious for CN since 2014, it's certainly non-existent now. Afternoons and early evenings are hectic times for the grade school demographic kids TV targets. Even if you do get out of school at, say, 3 p.m., you still have to factor in after-school extracurriculars, or detention. Bus rides are only getting lengthier, and family dinner time where you can't even be on a phone without condemnation, much less watching TV. Not to mention fitting in homework somewhere too. By the time the average American kid's schedule is free enough to actually consider watching TV, Cartoon Network's airtime is nearly over, if you're optimistic, if not long done. Now, that sequence of events doesn't apply to every family, it certainly didn't to mine, but I'm speaking in broad strokes here. This pain is especially acute outside of the Eastern time zone. Cartoon Network will now end at 6 p.m. Central Time, and if you don't have access to CN's West feed elsewhere, your chances of actually watching that millionth Teen Titans Go rerun, if you really want to, have just gone from slim to none. In the immediate term, it's a free giveaway of that potential audience to Nick and Disney Channel. Not that Nick runs much later most of the week, admittedly, but even that extra amount of airtime, plus the pull of the Thursday night sitcom premieres that are growing in, could prove quite lucrative for them. And Nick at Night has always been a much more fluid barrier than Adult Swim anyway, airing a number of Nick shows in its early hours, or being pushed back outright, on numerous occasions in recent years. Even if Cartoon Network did have anything new to air, where would it actually go now? In the face of Disney Channel offering competitive premieres on Saturday mornings, and Nickelodeon recently launching a weekday afternoon premiere strip, the two most obvious time slot options now face considerable headwinds. And given CN is falling ever more firmly into third place in the ratings averages, those are fights they'll find tough to win. More crucially, the reduced visibility that comes from ending at 7 p.m. will be devastating for Cartoon Network's future. Cartoon Network and the executives who run it have learned the hard way over the past few years that, for all the talk of audiences moving there, going all in on streaming services will not save your brand. Even if it could, streaming services have proven that they just can't offer the same levels of promotion, visibility, access, and sheer longevity that a linear outlet offers content and that CN, theoretically, can give. Cartoon Network's ever-shifting strategy has been transparent enough that you can probably equate the success of their recent series to their prominence on the channel's linear schedule. Researching the data that I would need to really make that case is not something I have time for in this video, as much as that's worth following up on. even with shows that have lived most of their lives on HBO Max, like Infinity Train, the case could be made that they wouldn't have had as much sticking power with audiences if they didn't get linear attention first. To that effect, CN desperately shoved streaming series Chicken Seek and the Fungies onto the linear channel in 2021, and Warner Bros. Discovery has reluctantly admitted that kids' content hasn't been working well on the erstwhile HBO Max. Even the shows we deride as overplayed on their lineup probably wouldn't be where they are in terms of their lengthy runs and arguable reputations if they weren't part of a lineup to begin with. And robbing future CN originals of much of that opportunity is a subtle yet insidious way to destroy the channel as a whole from the inside out. The next Craig of the Creek, OKKO, Steven Universe, or Infinity Train will never get off the ground if it's basically invisible to the audiences the channel it airs on is looking to connect with. Kids TV moves faster than any other genre in television, and Cartoon Network ending at 7 p.m. legitimately creates the possibility that a generation of the demographic could grow up having never been able to watch Cartoon Network at all. The scheduling will have made it nearly inaccessible to the exact viewers CN needs to survive, and no amount of throwing money, effort, and prominence at the rebranded Max will fix that. It truly could prove more ruinous to the future and fate of Cartoon Network than the streaming service's content purge last summer, and no one will see it coming until it's far too late to stop it. Even if you do buy that there's demographic reasons for the shift, however, the move still flies in the face of Department Executive Michael Llewellyn's ambitions to expand CN's appeal beyond the traditional kids' TV demographic. Replace the school bus with your 9-to-5 and endless highway traffic and you come to the same conclusions. Though Llewellyn also heads Adult Swim, so maybe he's not concerned either way. But what case does Adult Swim have for starting so early anyway? I'll be honest in admitting that Cartoon Network doesn't seem to have much use for the airtime it has, but even when it started at 9 p.m., Adult Swim has also struggled to fill its airtime, holding off its premieres until later in the evening and repeating nearly all of its early evening adult cartoon reruns in the late night hours, long-standing scheduling behavior that's only just started to change recently. CN may not have any reason to run later, but Adult Swim also has no reason to start earlier, which serves not as a slight towards either channel, but as a scathing indictment of the way both networks have been run. And what about ACME Night? The Sunday evening programming block ostensibly focused on family co-viewing, however much that exists, hasn't found any sense of direction or justify its reason to exist over a year and a half after its launch. The heady promises made at its outset seemingly broken, or at best, only dubiously fulfilled as an afterthought. The fact that block will now jut 2 hours into Adult Swim's airtime makes it hard to justify its meandering and unclear place on the schedule, and if things don't change, it could soon be time to can that useless airspace. Cutting Cartoon Network back to a 7 p.m. close is simply a move that doesn't make any sense, no matter what way you slice it. It goes against the channel's previously stated strategic goals, and worse, it reeks of a lack of commitment to the network, which is the last thing CN needs right now. Even worse yet is that you could have pointed out all these issues for the channel's cut back to 8 p.m. 9 years ago, which further goes to show how stagnant CN has been a whole over the last decade. Honestly, I'd rather Warner Bros. Discovery just spare us all the death by 1,000 cuts this seems to be setting up for. If it is now no longer financially viable to run Cartoon Network, just admit it publicly and shut it down outright, instead of paring its hours back to the level of uselessness that Discovery family suffers from. The initial outrage might be immense, sure, but at least it'll save us from lurching through the slow, painful death that still feels inevitable for this channel. I went into more detail as to why it doesn't make sense to extend CN's airtime later in this video, up here or down in the description. Hit subscribe for more explorations through the world of television, and you can support these videos further at benzie.tk/join. I'll see you next time.